Hello, and welcome. You're listening to the Version 4 podcast. I am VadMillain, and this is going to be one of those solo episodes. I think that, so I've been like wanting to do more content for the show for a long time. It was always in the pipeline and in an idea in my head to have a solo, have some solo episodes. But I didn't want to, just put some shit out just for the sake of putting shit out, you know what I mean? So, obviously I started doing the podcast with, predominantly with interviews, right? And I still plan to do these interviews. It's like my favorite thing to do. And I have every intention of continuing to do that. So don't think that just because I'm doing solo episodes now as well, that's going to stop. It gives me an excuse to talk to people I want to talk to. It gives me an excuse to learn new things and to make new friends. So that's still going to be the primary, the crux of the version 4, content. But I want to do solo videos. I want to do solo podcasts. I want to do, videos that are completely unrelated to philosophy or tech or whatever, or only vaguely or whatever, have like mild association. So, this is all an experiment. I used to have a solo podcast before, but it was called I haven't even had my coffee yet. It was cool, but I was still in college. No, I had just finished college when it came out, and it was all right. I didn't have much to talk about. It was kind of contrived. It was definitely in the vein of this current, entity, but I don't think by any means it was like good per se, for a variety of reasons. But you have to like practice in obscurity prior to making any kind of real, monumental change or any kind of real productive output that anyone wants to actually like engage with. Those years of practice, they kind of go unsung, but they're necessary. So anyway, what's the point of me doing the solo podcast? Basically, I want to do a weekly solo podcast, just for the culture, to keep the fucking vibes. This way, kind of get a little more of my personality, which you get on Twitter. By the way, follow me on Twitter. But you also get like some of the ideas that I can't really go into detail while I'm trying to like conduct an interview and try to keep while trying to conduct an interview and keeping the conversation flowing in an engaging manner, that I can't really spiral off and tangent off into topics that I would otherwise go into. Like, there's too many moving parts, right? I'm trying to focus on the audio. I'm trying to focus on who I'm talking to. I'm trying to focus on this, that, and the other thing. But anyway, why would you want to listen to this? You hear my beautiful voice every week. But also, beyond that, I think that the overall theme of the channel is sort of lost when it's not lost, it's ambiguous, right? Which I like. You don't want to be too, you don't want to just, be too narrowly focused. At least I don't want to be too narrowly focused because I have a variety of interests. But the point of my channel, and, while yes, at least the interviews are predominantly focused around, influential and controversial thinkers and writers and, personalities online, the people I choose are fairly deliberate, right? It's not just I'm picking, while many of them are my friends now, I'm not just picking people that are just online that I'm friendly with or just, happen to have a fairly large following. They all kind of orbit a similar idea, a similar concept. And I think the more interviews that I have on the channel, the more this kind of very online a particular slant of very online starts to become apparent, I think. Because it's not just like, oh, they're online and they're anonymous and they've been canceled, or they're online and they're not canceled, but they wrote a philosophy book of this, or they have a philosophy. Excuse me, I'm tired. They have like a philosophy like Twitter or whatever. No, it's not just that. It's like these people are, in many respects, in kind of the words of my first guest, the burgeoning like netocratic elite, and netocrat sounds very like it's in Marxist, it's in like pseudo Marxist terminology, but I happen to think Bard is one of very underrated because I don't know, his books are like the most explanatory, have the most explanatory power about the internet that I've ever read. It's not even close. I know he seems a little bit kooky, but every one of his books is fucking brilliant. And if you haven't read the Futerica trilogy, Digital Libido, and Syntheism, Creating God in the Digital Age, you must. And then when his next book comes out in the next several years, you ought to get that as well. But I digress. I think that in 2020, you need to have a firm grasp of Ted Kaczynski in like Industrial Society, and you need to have a firm grasp of Bard. And there are others like Nick Land to some degree, Moldbug to some degree. There are others who have like Bronze Age Pervert. I think there are others that have very critical, and also everyone else I've put on my podcast. But I think there are people who have a very keen eye with respect to the internet, and I think that you need to understand what this phenomena is more concretely if you're to thrive. So this podcast, I think, is going to be a little more pragmatic. I think that while I do like to be in theory and whatever, I do think that there are practical steps. There are like artistic, aesthetic movements that you should be aware of. You should participate in. I think there are accounts that you should interact with. I think there are things you should do for your digital hygiene. I think there are things you ought to do for your like general online and offline, though the duality is non-existent, that well-being, if you're going to expect to thrive and continue to ascend to new heights in this online environment. For better or worse, to be online is going to be the exclusive. Being online is what reality is, and many people have said it, but like meat space is fading in obscurity. Meat space only exists insofar as it interacts and plays, is in some kind of dialectic with, I hate the fucking word dialectic, I gotta stop saying that word, is in an interplay with the online space. Like, for like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a not boomer app, but like, people only give a shit about going to like a park or some kind of fucking exhibit when they can also post about it on Instagram. As you see, you're at a concert, people have their phones out, yada yada yada. People say that shit all the time. I'm not going to harp on that. I actually don't think there's a problem with it. I don't think the unfettered like experience, unfettered, non-technologically aided or technologically accompanied experience isn't inherently better. Accelerate, obviously, but I do think that you need to understand what is being lost if you're going to thrive as we push forward. And this is why I said again that Industrial Society and its consequences, Industrial Society and Technological Slavery, right? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, that's what Ted K's book is, or manifesto. I think you need to understand the way that technology is affecting us as people, the way that we are. Oh, I don't know why I'm yawning. The way that, sorry for the yawn, that's fucking obnoxious. I think that we need to focus on like the way that we are interacting with our technology and the hygiene which we're using, and not in the fucking boomer way, like, oh my god, people are like, they're saying mean stuff to me online. I need to take a break online. That's fucking lame as fuck. And we're about 10 minutes and I can swear. That's some fucking fag bullshit. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. That's that whole like VGR Walden Sponding shit is lame. You're not gonna get anywhere with that. That's boomer shit. It furthers the online offline duality that I also again don't believe is real. The only way out is through when it comes to this online shit, and as such, you're only going to the Ted K myth. I don't know if it's a myth per se, but I think with increasing likelihood, and unless some eco terrorists blow some shit up, with increasing probability, you're never going to be able to get outside of online. Even if you go off into the wilderness and start chopping your own wood, you are basically an island unto yourself, and we as humans don't thrive in that manner. You need to be social. We are a social animal. So we need to take what is lost from pre-technological society, or take what is vital to humanity, to life, to fire and virality. We need to take that and apply it to the coming future of the very online, right? This is again why I think Bronze Age Pervert's book is so brilliant. As you all know, I don't need to tell you. BAP will hopefully be on the podcast soon. I've been talking to him forever. He's not really keen to go on to other podcasts, as you might already know. It's very difficult to convince him. He's already agreed to it many times over. The timing and such is what it's going to be. He will be on eventually, though. He has reassured me on multiple accounts. But also the quarantine didn't help a lot of things. But I digress. Having an understanding that there is an important distinction to be made. Like the egalitarian myth, this flat myth, does not exist. It's only through virality and vitality and creating something libidinal in a psychoanalysis way, like something linear, and drive some kind of that fucking vital conquistador energy that is being fought against in society now. That's what you need in the internet age. Even though we will see to increasing degree the flattening, the return to yeast life, again, as BAP said, we're going to see that in increasing degree. That is not going to go away anytime soon. The internet as a technology flattens everything, but in this flattening, it also creates immense stratification, despite the fact that it also provides more opportunities to thrive. It's I think I'll go into this a lot more in the second section, but again, what separates people in the internet age is not it's not going to be their material conditions per se. What separates them is would be increasingly more their ideology and their behaviors online. And again, I'll get to that a bit more. So that's going to be the end of the first section. Section. Stay tuned. All right, and we're back. I just got my kefir. strawberry flavored. I'm filled with all kinds of probiotics. My gut culture has been recalibrated. There was probably a musical interlude there. I haven't figured out which one I'm going to use yet. When I post this, I'll tell you who that was. But anyway, so for part 2 here, in this internet age, right, as I said before in the last section, the technology of the internet itself is going to flatten things. So what do I mean by that? If you ever read Bard's stuff, or if you ever, read, I think Ted Kaczynski goes into it a little bit too. Many others have gone into it as well. History is written by the victors, right? And as a species, we are a social species. We are a social animal. And you can view history via ages in communication technology, right? Now, in school, you're taught Bronze Age, Silk, Golden Age, whatever the fucking, the metallic ages, because the Stone Age, Bronze Age, whatever the fuck the next one is, right? But the reason you're taught that is because school is based around the hierarchical, industrial society, whatever model, right? And this industrial production-based society would, of course, base their education and their understanding and perspective on history would be based upon multiple eras leading up to the modern, era of technology, such that modern era of production society, such that we can speak to all of human history leading up to this point. Whatever, I'm rambling, but you get what I'm trying to say. Now, since we are now in the digital age, the winners of this current paradigm, the netocrats, as Bard would say, would also view history as being multiple eras leading up to their ultimate, ascension, right? So you can think of the human animal as beginning in tribes with, verbal communication. The most amount of communication information that could be passed along from one person to the next is done orally, right? And as such, the smartest person in society would be the old woman, who's been there, she's in charge of the inner circuit. She's the oldest fucking person there, and she has all the information about all the berries that you can eat, all the information about this and the other thing. The hunting captain would be probably the second oldest, etc., right? The matriarch, the mother, the patriarch. This is why in verbal societies they often cherish and respect and revere their elders. This is why. It's because they are the gatekeepers of all the tribe's knowledge. Without them, then the tribe is fucked. They've lost all the knowledge from, the person who has the most wisdom and knowledge in the village, right? Upon the invention of written language, we now could go to the old person right before they die and go, tell us everything you know about XYZ, write all that shit down, and society can be reorganized, because now we're not stuck in a cyclical trap where we effectively lose all of our knowledge every time the elder dies. We can progress because we can compound the knowledge from all previous generations via the written word, right? Now, very few people could read, right? Only the elites, only the very well educated, and also the people in the ministry, right? They spent, years and years writing and rewriting books by hand, right? This is why books were hundreds of thousands of dollars in modern currency back then, until the next iteration of the printing press, where the cost of producing books was virtually brought down to pennies, right? So it went from hundreds of thousands of dollars, where you have these very ornamental books, where books are considered to be like the whole. There's the reason why the Bible was the holy book, right? in all these other religious tomes. These religious tomes came about from compiling centuries worth of information and myth and verbal mythologies, and they've been compounded and in like a mimetic war, and they created these religious tomes that effectively were, the word of God. They were the logos in written form, right? And it also is not a coincidence the very first book printed on the Gutenberg press was the Bible, right? Now, okay, cost of printing goes down, society gets reorganized again, we create the bureaucratic, society that we essentially just left, right? Everything is mass media, everything's hierarchical, right? The reason why Napoleon's army was so strong was because every one of his soldiers were literate. When every single node of your army can read orders and read very complex orders because they've been written and they're not obfuscated, they're not altered via the telephone game, you have a very effective army. This is Hegel's whole vibe when he was jerking Napoleon's army off or whatever, and Napoleon's army being the zeitgeist. And alas, we find ourselves in modernity, where we are in the most recent iteration of this information, communication game, and we create the internet. Now, before we continue, I want you to notice the difference in the organizational structures of the previous iterations and what it did to society as a whole. All right, so we have the first paradigm, which was only verbal, right? And note that all the mythologies of the time were things were about eternal recurrence, right? We are talking about, anima and pagan mythologies, and everything's in flux, and the engine of progress doesn't exist yet, right? Because you're dealing with survival amidst chaos, right? Very primordial, right? Think about the next paradigm with the written language, right? And we're thinking about like monotheism and like major and gods, right? And like major archetypical gods. And this makes sense when there's one book, right? And the society that's created around the existence of very few written tomes of great importance would make sense that they'd create things like the Catholic Church, where only person allowed to read the Bible are those who are trained in such things. You talk to God via a priest, right? There's God, and then there's God's order, and then there's the rest of everyone else, right? The scale and the mysticism involved here would explain why there's cathedrals built towards these divine beings, right? All right, keep moving. Printing press, things are now far more atomized. It makes sense also that now in atomized hierarchy, you experience things like the corporation, you experience factories, you experience ideologies like liberalism. It makes sense that these like linear, atomized, patriarchal, and I mean this in a good way, patriarchal, ideologies are the ones that thrive, right? But now we've entered digital age. The internet is flat. It's similarly atomized, but it's even more atomized than just like you as an individual reading a book. It's atomized. It's atomized and fractured, right? Like I can access the internet from 5 or 6 devices in my immediate vicinity. I got like a Google Home I could talk to. I got a fucking phone. I got my computer. I got like this. I can access the internet from many places. This will have an effect on people, on your personhood, right? There's a reason why, the individual. As I said in the previous video, so I'll touch on it briefly. But there's a reason why, like, politically, people are in this like in the death throes of the individual. There's a reason why they're clinging on so desperately to aspects of their individuality, like their race or their gender or whatever. It's because because just as the religious zealot no longer believes in God, so they have to double down and be far more, violent and adversarial with respect to their religion. They have to be a zealot to contend with their internal lack of faith. Does that make sense? Similarly, the individual, the liberal religious zealot who has lost faith in the unification of the self in the individual has to tease out and become a religious zealot with respect to their atomized identity, right? And now you see what happens because of that. Let's really think about it. What the fuck is the point of intersectionality, right? There's a societal like race to the bottom, right? Everyone's arguing about which identities are more oppressed, which identities are more salient, and if we can get a salient grasp of whose identity is what and who sits where on the oppression ladder, we can figure out, we can get a proper composition of what the individual. It's fucking retarded, right? It doesn't make any goddamn sense, right? And these why is it that diversity is important versus, say, like, merit? The reason why diversity is important is because you want to pay visual homage to the individual and the different types of persons, right? We need to have a constant reminder of the importance of individual difference, because at the root of it, we need to be reminded that the individual and its uniqueness is what's critical. And at the end of the day, none of that's real, right? And not only that, the self isn't real. The individual as self is a fabrication. There's a reason why we all have while I'm a pseudo-anonymous and I talk to pseudo-anonymous people online who all of us have multiple personalities, multiple accounts, multiple egregores that we play into on a daily basis for the fun of it, right? The netocratic elite will play around with identities because to be unified, to be that boomer fucking unified person online who's like a face fag and like has the blue check and wants you to know just exactly who they are and has their fucking Substack email list and writes about all their fucking no one gives a shit anymore. None of that matters. There's a reason why no one of any intellectual value is on Facebook anymore. There's a reason why Instagram's filled with vapid thoughts and, quote unquote influencers, right? None of that matters in the internet age. It has mattered for the last 5 years or so, ever since or 10 years, however long Zuckerberg's been in charge of shit. But we all are seeing very clearly and very quickly how little that matters in the grand scheme of things. And again, like it or not, the internet's gonna be around for the rest of your life, right? It can survive nuclear bombs. It's decentralized. It's not going anywhere. It's gonna outlive humanity in all likelihood. Whether or not we can access it, different story. But whatever, not the point. I'm digressing again. All right, so the structure of society, as in the previous iterations of communication technologies, begins to match the actual communication technology itself. And the internet, as we know, has no center, no explicit center, but I can expand on it in a second. But it's generally flat, right? It's flat. It gives more or less equal opportunity to any voice online, and we already know that. I don't need to go into that in detail. Now, what is also noticeable is that because it's flat, the winners are extreme winners and the losers are extreme losers, right? So I think Naval mentioned it once, how like online most traffic goes to Netflix, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. There's like 10 sites that everyone goes to. And then there's a bunch of shit way out in the fat tails. Oh, they're hardly even considered fat, but they're like way out in the tails of the distribution is the rest of the internet traffic, right? And similarly, society and people with respect to their gains will tend to match that distribution. There's going to be your trillionaire Bezos, Satoshi Nakamoto type motherfuckers, and then there's going to be the rest of us. Or maybe you might be one of those too. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to you. Speak to your future. I hope you terminate, go out there and kill it. But that stratification is built into the system. It's built into the technology itself. But anyway, I digress. I'm gonna come back to the next section, and we're gonna kind of elaborate on kind of what the behaviors of these two types of people consist of. Okay, all right. I'm back. All right, so let's think about this. The internet is going to stratify, it's just going to fundamentally stratify life and the online environment. It's a fact of life. We're now global. People like to talk about late capitalism or whatever. I think fundamentally, late capitalism is going to be the shift from late capitalism is what happens when you shift from a production-based society to a distribution, I guess, based society, and it will center attention as the currency. And we already operate in this manner, right? More in so many situations. Let's think about the crypto space for a second. I'm not going to get too specific because not everyone here is from the crypto Twitter, but let's think about crypto Twitter. People in crypto Twitter care more about their followers and like posting charts and getting the clout from the charts than they do about the money they make from correctly playing the market. This fundamentally points out the difference between pre-capital, like pre-attention society, and post-attention society. The attention is the commodity, okay? Capital kind of comes out of thin air. There's a fucking new cryptocurrency that all of a sudden has value overnight. Like, the only thing that's valuable in these spaces with these currencies and such is the leverage that they provide and the liquidity they provide for online transactions. We've escaped money as time as it was originally, and money in standard capitalism basically became time kind of multiplied by labor, right? I guess labor is time, right? But when you start to have machines and stuff and like factories and such, the value of any individual's particular labor dissipates, and and the money itself kind of becomes like a leveraged form of labor, right? You can buy time via money. I don't know, it's a little complicated, but I think you get the idea. Effectively, labor is leverage, and it creates money in the attention in capitalism proper that we just exited from the industrial society. Now, in the attention society, production is essentially non-existent. Labor you can buy factory work from fucking China for nothing, right? Labor costs aren't really necessary, especially when you consider the leverage that algorithms provide, right? So money effectively has begun to show its ass as being a fabrication, being essentially non-existent. Money kind of just appears out of nowhere. But what you are seeing is the people who can command your attention, the people who can occupy the very non-zero resource that is your attention. Well, I guess it is zero. It's zero sum. Your attention is zero sum. You only have a limited amount of time in the day, right? Money is non-zero sum in this phase of society, but your attention is zero sum. Even if you can multitask, like I can play Spotify and also just be on the internet at the same time, there is also still a cap to how much you can leverage your attention at any particular given time. Okay. So your attention kind of becomes the closest to zero sum as we have. It's the most scarce resource you have at the moment, and subsequently it reorganizes society around attention. Now, fortunately, thanks to the unlimited and virtually free distribution the internet provides, your attention, society is now playing a non-zero sum game, right? Everyone is more or less capable of participating, right? In the previous era, if I take over a share of the market, that means you can't also participate in the market, right? In the case of like production, for example, right? Every percentage of the market that I occupy is one that you cannot. But with the case of the internet, right? Just because I have a very popular, not me in particular, my show is minute, but just because Joe Rogan, for example, has a massive podcast, that does not mean that you also can't have a podcast playing at the same exact time that people also listen to, right? The only thing that is zero sum is that their attention that they provide is limited, okay? This fundamentally opens up more opportunities. But just like in, the previous era where your labor and the amount of work and time you're willing to put in manifests as capital, in this phase of society, the amount of attention you can occupy, the amount of attention you can command is what gets you money, right? People would just throw money at you if you have their attention. This stands for in a soft way like streamers, and also manifests in like a more robust, concrete way with the sense of like Bitcoin, for example, or like any cryptocurrency, or like any fucking, or like an Uber or some shit like that. Like, what gave Bitcoin, outside of it technologically being designed to deflate and whatever and maintain that deflationary behavior, outside of its like technological robustness, what created the value proposition in Bitcoin was and continues to create its value is the attention it generates. The more attention that Bitcoin generates, the more people are aware of it, the more of a meme it becomes, the grander the memeplex becomes, and the more value it inherently has. Everything becomes a memeplex. As Faustina said in the most recent podcast, everything is a universe. You're selling them a universe, right? This is late capitalism. This is the post-capitalism at its best, right? It's the art market is all markets, right? Now, granted, the art market is, thanks to the CIA, became kind of a way for rich people to embezzle and launder their money. But the concept behind like creating a piece of art that has achieved so much acclaim and attention that it inherently increases it in value is what all economies online become, right? The reason why these fucking e-thoughts get the money from simps from their OnlyFans, or the reason why fucking Pokimane can make $1 million, or fucking Belle Delphine can make millions of dollars selling her bathwater, it's not because bathwater is inherently valuable. It's not because she put any labor into creating, any real labor into creating the bathwater, or any fucking money into the distribution of said bathwater. What the reason why she's able to make millions of dollars off of, sorry, I was on a roll and my fucking alarm goes off. Anyway, the reason why Belle Delphine's able to take her bathwater and make millions of dollars is because Belle Delphine is able to generate attention from simps, okay? And she's able to create attention, and she's able to, and effectively via sexual trolling, she does this, she creates a Pornhub and makes thousands of dollars from her Pornhub, but doesn't actually make any porn. She sells her bathwater. This creates a fucking massive viral meme online, and everyone's like, holy shit, she's fucking selling bathwater, and then she sells out all of her bathwater, even though everyone simultaneously knows there's no inherent value in the bathwater. The attention that the bathwater capsule things that she was selling generated made everyone intellectually recognize it in this era as having attention, and as such having capital, right? All capital in the internet age follows attention. If you can create attention, if you can place a intellectual marker in fucking the noosphere and get everyone's eyes on that marker, the capital will follow. This works. This is the case for every fucking online money generating phenomena that exists. Now, whatever means you use to manipulate people in order to get their attention, that changes, right? You have hot chicks using their sexuality and men's weakness and lack of desire and their overwhelming desire. You can get people starting GoFundMes and exploiting people's virtue and their fucking morality to manipulate them into giving you money. You can exploit people's work ethic and be like, oh, look, I worked really hard at this fucking artisanal craft. Like, there's a million ways to generally essentially exploit people's desires and wills and what they'll place their attention on. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing every single time. You generate attention, and then capital follows, right? And there are ways you can be a grifter, or you can be effectively everyone's a grifter by this definition, and I think that it's accurate. And decoupling the Protestant work ethic from the Protestant work ethic from like grifting is, I think, what you need to do in this era, right? And it's hard because you spend 20 some odd years in the previous paradigm, right? And that, like, the transition for some is harder if you're digitally native. There's the reason why Zoomers are able to do it a lot more seamlessly and get fucking rich on TikTok or rich on fucking YouTube, is because they never had to experience the prior era, right? So anyway, that's just the case, right? But as a consequence of this, you're now in a situation where there are essentially two different behaviors you can have online, and the amount of time you spend in these behaviors will determine your how much prestige, how aristocratic you are in the online environment. You can either create or you can consume, and that's it. And that's the long and short of it. If you spend more time creating than you do consuming, then you will invariably become more of a netocratic individual. Now, you could create shit constantly, and it will limit your ability to command attention, right? If you're just creating endless bullshit, or just endlessly fucking flooding people's shit with ads and nonsense, people aren't going to be that interested, but you will probably generate an audience, right? This is how these Instagram fucks do it. This is the Gary V method, effectively. I mean, eventually you'll get good at it, I imagine. And that's kind of Gary V using his boomer ass Protestant work ethic, high conscientiousness, to just steamroll his way into the public eye. I like Gary V. I think I like his message, but his execution is incorrect. I think his execution is very boomer like, and it's ineffective. It's inefficient, right? A lot of his success is runoff from what he's doing, and it's not directly tied to what he's doing, right? It's like he's getting returns on his work and his investment as a secondary effect of all the work that he's putting into it. But whatever, I digress. So there's consumption and there's production, creation, and there's consumption. Okay. And you see this in so many ways. Like, I mean, think about the Coomer meme or consume. All these Coomer memes are, again, highlighting the distinction between creation and consumption. And we know on a fundamental level, anyone who's very online understands intuitively, there are those that create content, there's those that contribute, and there's those that solely consume. And there's an underclass that is being forged, as Bard called the consummariat, that is being created. And this underclass, their online activity is entirely made up of consumption. It's made up of what has been called interpassivity and pornoflation. Okay. The next segment will be elaborate on those two concepts, but effectively it's experiencing life vis-a-vis someone else, vicariously through other people. For example, watching a lot of porn or playing a lot of video games or whatever. These are you experiencing life. I mean, or like even meta shit, like only watching reaction videos and reading reviews. Like, these are all meta vicarious experiences. You're not experiencing anything directly. You're only experiencing through proxy. Okay, this is effectively interpassivity. And then there's pornoflation, which is the graphic and overwhelmingly effectively overwhelmingly obscene and pornographic display of yourself. This is when you see people is when you see girls who essentially become all kind of turn into e-prosties, and constantly all the leftists constantly divulging all their mental illnesses online and just fucking venting and spewing all their inner dialogue and inner fucking insecurity, all that shit. That's pornoflation. It's the pornographic inflation of the self, of content that is so deeply enmeshed in your personhood and in your and in the gross workings of your body and self, that these are the two underclass phenomena. And there's a reason why no one fucking likes these OnlyFans chicks. They are, to some extent, using what they have to generate attention, but we all, again, do not like these people. They are also the underclass of the internet. Okay, and the final section will come up in a second, and I think I'll elaborate a bit on that all, and I'll kind of see what I can do to bring it all together. So we're back. Let's kind of, I'm gonna try to create some kind of closure for all this. So in this age, right, you have your consumers, you have your producers. You're in a situation where the distribution is flattened. There's going to be massive stratification, right? But we're also in a situation where it takes very little. There are always exponential returns for some of the simplest behaviors, okay? When you see, let's think about the interpassivity and the pornoflation shit, right? The type of returns of sitting there watching porn all the time and just cooming and fucking being a coomer playing video games all day, we see the effects of that, right? That coomer meme is fucking brilliant. It's a brilliant piece of memery, right? All that happens is you're living your life proxy to someone else. You become bitter. You create this resentment. Nothing gets done. You become inert, right? You don't have any followers. You have shitty interactions online for the most part. And even if you have all that stuff, you likely don't have any success with women and in genuine relationships, right? And as such, you're fucking dumping your mental illness and fucking degeneracy on the timeline all the time, and no one gives a fuck about you online, right? You become isolated. You become shitty, right? You become some fucking shitty asshole reply guy in the comment section leaking sewage on the fucking timeline, right? So this is obviously lower class behavior. This is your consummariat behavior. This will only continue to accelerate into the downside. This is what we're like in 2020 before virtual reality exists to any real degree. We have VR goggles, sure, and there are like some VR there are some VR like use cases, right? But VR is not ubiquitous. We are pre-sex machine. We are at the moment, the most you can do, like, there's still limited ways for you to devolve into degeneracy, right? And then in the pornoflation aspect, right? There's, we see people's fucking whole personalities expand into sexual deviancy, right? We have your troons and your furries and your fucking what's the shit, the gurus, and like people's whole personalities and all their thoughts inflate into sexual fetish and like of various ilks, right? That's only going to continue to expand as technology can aid this degeneracy, right? This is effectively hell, right? You don't want to be in this. This is what we here at Version 4, or namely me, and all the people I bring on, are adamantly opposed to. Okay, this is the descent into yeast life. This is everything. This is hell. This is actual hell. This is demonic bullshit. Okay. This is why I said originally that things like Ted K and a lot of these like eco-fascist types are important to follow and to keep up with, and your Bronze Age prototypes, is because you don't want to become a head, like a fucking floating head devolving into degeneracy, a pornoflated floating head coomer who is experiencing life passively. You want to do whatever you can to increase vitality, to increase your flame, your inner flame. Okay, you want to eat real food. You want to experience real relationships. You want to have real values. That irony bullshit where that detachment from life, this whole fucking relativist fucking faggotry is not going to get you anywhere in the internet age. Every genuine attempt at creation, every time you put yourself out there and take a risk to further dominate and to further take up space, every single time you do that, that is a further climb up the fucking J curve of exponential returns on your behavior. That is netocratic behavior. That is aristocratic behavior. This fucking you want to embody master morality on the internet, and that's not in like the fucking like like I can do whatever, like it's not just like I can do whatever I want. Like I think I should probably do an episode entirely on master morality, because I think people wholly misunderstand it, just because it's fucking cool to be like, oh, Nietzsche, shut up, fucking loser. You need to take every fucking, I mean, look, we're all to some degree gonna consume, right? Like I watch anime. I like anime. I like to read manga. I like to read books. But you have to understand what even 1% teetering in one way or the other does to your online mental hygiene or whatever, to your personhood, to the way your egregores operate. Like, these things have real effects, and in the decades to come of internet space, these type of things are incredibly important, and they will be the distinguishing factor between whether or not you're left in the dust, or if you're able to thrive in this era, whether or not you're going to be the fucking internet equivalent of a fucking, lumpen proletariat serf fuck, or if you're going to be bourgeoisie chilling in, your citadel with all your bitcoins and vibing. Like, these are two different people. This is whether you're going to have fruitful, prosperous online discussions where you meet more and more interesting people, where your information pipelines become more and more pristine, right? Like, that's another thing. Like, your information diet, right? If you have to consider that, like, there are people, right? You see them, like your Reddit tier losers who are getting hive mind information from secondhand accounts, from this and the other thing, versus going directly to the source, versus being on the pulse of things, versus having, counterfacts and having a understanding and a metaphysical grasp of things as they are in this era, right? There's so, like, how many people on the side of Twitter were up on coronavirus and the cure of it in fucking February? We knew nicotine in cigarettes had a disproportionate resistance against this, and we fucking knew it was coming, and we knew hydrochloroquine and zinc, all this shit was being talked about by Loki in fucking February, in, like, at the end of January, middle of February. He was already talking about all this. We knew all this stuff already. And the reason why you had access to this information is because you have a more holistic, a better intellectual information diet. Your diet is it's unprocessed. Just like you want to eat unprocessed foods, you should also consume unprocessed information. Being able to navigate these information pipelines, to be able to navigate, edifying interactions in people versus fucking trash draining vampiric fucks. This is what you need to hone if you plan to become anyone of importance, or anyone of any value or importance in this era. If you want to be able to find yourself within the inner circles of your interests, if you want to find yourself as a, person who's like, opinion matters, if you want to command people's attention, if you want to generate opinions and perspectives that people will benefit from, you can only do this if you're avoiding interpressivity, avoiding pornoflation, and creating, and having a firm grasp on what is worthwhile, what is worth your time, and what's not. And that's kind of the long and short of it. So that's all I got for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, share. This one should be free. Future episodes probably not so much, or maybe half and half. I don't know. I have to figure that out. But all right, yeah. Peace out.